All right, we are here. It's Susie, and I have Tracy Burrell. We are finishing up the therapeutic yoga intensive. And Tracy's a kinesiologist outside of Ottawa who has had some pretty awesome stuff. We want to teach you a little bit about why pain isn't really where the problem is, and recovery from persistent and consistent pain, which is something we've been doing a lot here at the intensive. So the biggest thing that you were getting was like, you've had an ankle sprain,
Right.
You've had back stuff, you've had headaches, and so you've been doing a lot of engaging before moving. Like, I've got to get the glutes going, I've got to make the glutes happen before I move, I've got to brace the abdomen in order to make core stability happen. When in reality, that's not quite how it rolls, right?
Yes, I would agree. It was rolling, but it wasn't rolling so well.
Yeah. And so then what did you, like, when you think about what we initially played with on the first day was looking at her Warrior 1. And so what we discovered first is she stepped back into Warrior 1. She would move the leg back. Well, actually go back into your bigger Warrior 1. And she would take her leg back, and then her pelvis would move all over the place as she was stepping that leg back. And when we looked closely at her foot, then her foot would also do quite a bit of pronating while her pelvis did all that movement. And so then there was this idea of maybe hold the ankle a little bit harder and a little bit firmer in order to make Warrior 1 happen. Like, a lot of times when we are in Warrior or we're thinking about the feet, we think about lifting the arches or holding our feet in a certain way. But even though Tracy had a ankle sprain, that wasn't helping keep her ankle any more stable. And so then what we actually played with is we took a block, and from there we took a block and she stepped back, and I put a block just underneath her foot initially so that we could watch the trajectory of movement more cleanly. So she was here and she was then stepping the leg back, and she could tell where her pelvis was kind of going a little bit wiggly and wobbly, right? And so then she was here. Now, out of that, over the course of the day, and as she was kind of getting curious about how her back was related to her ribs, and she was finding some sticky points in her ribs, and then she was starting to recognize how the rib stickiness was related to her head. So now, all these various fascial changes were starting to kick in. And
On the inside aspect of my foot, which was causing me to lean to the side. So as I got awareness to put more weight through my whole foot, then that in fact changed my pelvis.
right? And so then the idea being that is recognizing when we're thinking about helping someone find some relief, and we're looking at a variety of movement, is think about it in terms of what is the trajectory of movement, right? So you're stepping back into Warrior. So the leg bone needs to move in the hip socket. So what's actually going on, this platform of your pelvis, what's actually going on as you bring that leg back? And in Tracy's case, she had had this ankle thing and had been working over and over and over and over again at the ankle, but change wasn't happening. And so then when she was able to recognize this trajectory, she could recognize the pelvis and how this platform was related to her ankles and her feet. Then she opened up her perception of what was happening, and then was able to make changes elsewhere. And then she could see the relationship between her rib cage, and then her head, which is often the case with persistent and chronic pain, right? It is not just in one area, it's often widespread, and to be able to, to unravel it can be really, it's like you pull one yarn and it's like, where do you go? It can be a real mess and craziness piece. But you were even getting some more stuff like broader than just the movement, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as in what do you mean the movement was changing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was something in your ribs.
Yes, And so then I realized that I'm holding a lot of tension and compensating. So instead of moving from my pelvis, my big aha this week has been my pelvis is not moving well at all. So once my pelvis has started to move better, then I'm seeing a relation not only to my rib cage, but also be able to get that moving better and having that awareness around the connection between everything.
Nice. Okay, so the idea here is think about your movement from this perspective of a trajectory, of moving from point A to point B. Recognize the compensatory patterns. Allow those compensatory patterns to quiet down. And then notice what you notice as a result of that. Allow yourself to be curious. Really try hard to not make this like a right way.